Good evening and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the program. Tonight we'll be talking about preparing for retirement. So very quickly I'll introduce my guests for this evening. And I'll start with Benjamin Muchibi, who is right next to me. Benjamin is the Head of Research and Sector Development at the Uganda Retirement Benefits Regulatory Authority. Welcome, Benjamin.
Thank you very much.
Right. And I'll skip Banis for last and I'll go to Ronald Mukasa, who is a financial literacy coach. He has worked extensively with small and medium enterprises, offering financial training and advisory services. Very warm welcome, Ronald.
Thank you.
I see you on my TV quite a bit.
Thank you.
All right, and finally, Banis Mvano. Banis has been missing from us. I don't know why she ran away from the show, but it's good to have you back. Banis is a wealth manager with Stanbic Bank, and she's also a financial advisor and planner. Welcome, Banis. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Josephine, and thank you for having me.
All right, well, let's say it as it is. Well, so while we begin this conversation, first of all, I want to understand what UBRA does. I pass that building almost every day, and in my mind it is old people's building. But what is the essence of UBRA?
UBRA is a government agency, and its mandate is to regulate and supervise the establishment of retirement benefit schemes. So what we do is to make sure that an individual or firm that is engaged in the business of managing retirement benefit schemes is guided on how to establish a scheme, and also we help to monitor the operations to make sure that the savings of members are protected. Okay. So that's our primary work. So
UBRA is fairly new because there's a point when our savings weren't protected.
Yes, there was a point, but yeah, you're right. But what I can tell you is that we have set up capabilities to make sure that savers are comfortable that their savings will be safe until the time when they retire. About how many of these bodies do we have? Offhand, I'll just say NSSF, but how many of these do we have? We have a total of 65 retirement benefit schemes, including NSSF. Okay. Yes. So what I can say is that apart from NSSF, which is a mandatory scheme, a national mandatory scheme, we also have the parliamentary pension scheme. It's also mandatory, but it's called employer-based mandatory scheme. So the members that are contributing to the parliamentary scheme do not have to contribute to the NSSF. The rest are supplementary occupational schemes that are set up by agencies, by businesses for their employees. So the employer contributes, then the employees also contribute. Okay. So it's additional to the NSSF. Okay. Well, so today we want to talk about retirement. So probably people my age or younger are watching and they're thinking, do I really need to be thinking about retirement at my age? Then people older who are closer to retirement are thinking, should I retire now? Do I need a checklist? What must I do? And then of course we have people who have already retired. So I would like to hear from you, because I'm sure all of you at some point have encountered these categories of people. Let's start with the older people, the people that have retired that you've encountered. What has been their story? What have they said that I wish I'd done better?
Ladies first. In my encounter with the different people that I've seen, for many, for instance, you go to them with an investment option. Let's say save towards your retirement. They're already maybe 55. So from 55 to the time they retire, which is 65, in what is believed to be at 65, they have a shorter time than one who would have started when they are 30. So I remember meeting one in particular who said, but where were you? Why didn't you come a bit earlier? So again, even with me answering that, I'll counter what you're saying. Is it too early for us to start saving for investment? Is it too late? I think the earlier one does it the better, because the pressure is less. You know, you have more time to save smaller bits. Because then you start later, depending on what your target is, you need to save much more in the shorter time that you have. So for me, the stories have been around, I wish I had known about these investment options before. And so it's really a lack of knowledge. What people know maybe is build that house so that you get rental income. In as much as people are told, okay, but you know, when you build, the money you put in, by the time you realize it will take another 10 years. Yes, but because the need of having regular income is higher, they are willing to do that. Let me build and get some sort of passive income and maybe buy land. So that is what they know. So they wish they had these options earlier. They still do them, but they wish they could have started at a much earlier time.
I like to think that we are friends, Bernice, but I've not received this advice that
Let's talk after
hoping,
here.
I'm hoping in my old age I won't be saying, but Bernice, you let me down. Ronald, what stories have you had, especially the painful stories that somebody says, look, this is where I am now, but I could have done better?
Yeah, I think when you think about retirement, the way it is often understood, it's that time when you leave that regular job and you have to go home and rest. And I think the two big questions which most people have is, one, what am I going to do? Secondly, can I afford it? So you have to kind of answer the money question together with what it is you will do. I mean, people spend quite a bit of time in retirement. One of the things is often you find that the first 1 year you notice that actually you are still alive, you're still strong, and you need to kind of consume the time, so you need to get something done. But then it's also quite expensive in retirement. You don't enjoy the networks which you had before.
Yeah.
I mean, when you are working, you may want to go to a place, and the networks which you have can allow you to go to that place comfortably. Sometimes there are resources which you take for granted. It could be as simple as getting airtime from your workplace. Now you notice that actually you have to get airtime using your own money, or you have to buy a newspaper using your own money, and you enjoy reading newspapers, or fuel. So all those things come into play. So there is that, I think, as Bernice has rightly put it, there is that big question of whether you can afford it. And I think there are stories of, and also the shock of retirement. Many times it feels like it is, you're starting something new when you are retiring. So I mean, you have possibly gotten your money from NSSF, and you decide to launch it to agriculture, and you say, I'm going to be a farmer. I used to be a farmer when I was young. This is my moment to do it. And then you notice that there is a lot you don't know about farming, and that it can be a very risky business. So there are those, and there are big decisions which are made at retirement. So, and I think the investments which you make, what you choose to consume your time, there are a number of mistakes which you can make.
Yeah.
But I think you need to consider the basics. First of all, can you feed yourself? Can you transport yourself? And definitely health is another big question which you need to consider. Will you be able to afford those bills? So those are big questions which you face.
And we're going to sort of break each of those down. Benjamin, do you interact with people that have retired often?
Yes, we do. We have a program. I wouldn't say people who have retired, but people who are just close to retirement. It's called the pre-retirement seminar. So we have one every year, and we meet people who have, normally we bring somebody who's going to talk about life in retirement. Then we have people who have about 2 years to retire. And my experience is that it's just regret, because what they tell us is that they thought so much about the current self without thinking about the future self. So when you are coming to retirement, most agencies, it's about 60 years. So when you're about 55 or 57, you start thinking about the future self. And it's too late, because just 2 years, you have only 2 years left actually, and you're going to have a sharp fall in disposable income. So you start worrying about so many things. And many of them mentioned that they did not exercise discipline and self-restraint. What they did is that they were spending on so many things that they think they shouldn't have spent on. So it's a regret, and there are very few cases when somebody says, yes, I did a good job, and I'm excited about retiring. There are very few cases.
But have you had any of those cases, somebody who is ready and excited? What did they do right?
I've met, again, there are few cases. I've met a few. Like last week I met one. He was Asian. And he's in his retirement. He looked, even looking at him, he seemed at peace, he was relaxed, came and met me. And indeed I also asked him, what is it? Because you're different from other people. Maybe it's their culture. As you know, for them also, the Asian community can begin planning, let's say, for the grandchild. Meaning for them, they are more or less okay and are able enough now to start planning for the grandchild. So the way they are brought up, it's just automatic. You know that, okay, when I reach a certain stage, I need to start planning ahead. You know, take out life insurance for your children, or start putting money aside for the next 20 years. So it's like they have goals already that they work towards too. Because even when we have this discussion of retirement, what are those things you want to achieve also at retirement? Or what does retirement look like to you so that you begin working backwards? So for me, I was actually as amazed as you are, that this man seems so relaxed, seems he has it all together. He still wants to do other investments, but you could see where he is, he's happy. And I think it's a nice place to be because he did certain things beforehand. So I guess for me, it's more of a, we need to be able to know what we want and be able to do it early enough. So I totally agree with him. There are very few. And I remember sharing with someone, yes, we share the good stories, but the number of good stories you share, there's even an even higher number of people who don't have good stories. And there's regret and my money went and things like that.
Okay, so because we're talking about retirement, and I'm thinking in my head, somebody's probably wondering, what does retirement mean? Because there are people who say, oh, my mother retired, but she has a shop here. Is she retired? Or what exactly does retirement mean? Because I know that I'll be watching a movie and this couple in Europe says, when we retire, we're going to take a boat cruise around the world, or something like that. And it's a very different picture from what we have, what we witness here. So what is retirement? What does retirement look like?
Well, I think I'll take a swing at that. When you think about retirement, I think there is the retirement which was mentioned of you hit 60, your workplace says, leave us. Thank you, we do a party for you and we release you to the world. So there is that sense of retirement. And I think that part of retirement is an interesting one. Because usually it takes away something which has been a constant, which is this paycheck which you have been receiving consistently. So that's what it takes away. It doesn't take away your energy. It doesn't take away your sense of achievement or your sense of... So you can actually start out and say, you know what, I've gone out and I've started a business at 60.
If you're ready for it.
If you're ready, I mean. And I think for me that's the big question. It is, sometimes retirement doesn't necessarily mean that you should stop working. But usually whenever the word retirement is used, there are some things which stop happening, which have happened in the rest of your life. For example, there are jobs where they won't accept you. When you apply and say, I'm a 70-year-old and I'm ready to take on this role in this organization. People will say, you know what, go back home and rest. They say, but I am full of energy. So I need to actually do that. So I think the word retirement is usually used in that context. It is that event which kind of takes away some of these things which have been a constant in most of your work life. But definitely there is the question of, do you stop working because they have said you have retired? I think that's an argument. There are people who are strong and you can actually keep serving. And I personally think that, and I'll touch a bit on the earlier question which you asked on what success looks like in retirement or people who have succeeded. I think most of the people who tick the money question, who have a stable income into their retirement, actually enjoy their retirement. Some of them choose that their job is going to be to move the grandchildren around everywhere and enjoy that, and they can spoil them and be happy. Some of them choose to get engaged in their religious organization. You find someone is engaged in church and they're at every fundraiser, and some engage in education, they go to schools. So those people actually genuinely enjoy their retirement. But the reason why they enjoy it is they are not worried about where the milk is going to come from in the evening. They are kind of, that box has been ticked. So I personally think that when you think about what retirement means to you, because another way of looking at it, what about me who is 40 and I have lost my job for the next 5 years? Have I also retired?
You're forcefully retired.
Or, because in a way I'm also in a retirement situation. Have no work. So, and I think that's another actual big question, because there is this assumption that retirement is going to happen at 65 or at 60. But the truth is people are losing work at 30 and you are retrenched and your skill is very specific. If you are not, you need to readapt your skills. So I think that we have to broaden the concept of retirement, because when you think about the realities of what it means to be retired, it is that stable income is no longer coming. So either you prepared during your time when you're working to have a stable income, or you have to depend on someone else. Now the question is who that person is and how the relationship is. Can it sustain it?
Do you think that more people are delaying retirement now because they're not ready, or there's now the partial retirement of, okay, I am retired, but I'm not ready, so let me, start, or let me hold on a little bit longer, let me work a few more hours at the job, or Panis, you're going to say something.
No, I was actually going to add to what he said about retirement, because right now retirement is used, like he said, I want to finish my job at 40 and leave formal employment and start my own thing, so I'm retiring. Or
here in Uganda, because I figure in Uganda retirement.
no, but you've had it being used a lot though.
Yes.
I want to retire even at 30. Okay,
Wow.
I'm planning to retire at 30. But I think true retirement, as it was or as is supposed to be defined, is when you move away from active employment, and also usually because of age, you've worked so hard. Because remember, at 70, you're not as active as when you were 30 or 40. So we're saying you've reached this stage when you no longer have to wake up to actively work so that you survive and you have passive income that looks after you. Or even because you've reached that stage, we are saying why we are emphasizing prepare for retirement is the fact that you will reach a stage when you can no longer actively work. And that is why even companies put an age at 65, please. Thank you very much. We make for you a party. And then you
said
must
it better than he did.
and then you must leave. So it is inevitable, it will come. And that is why you see even with NSSF, they put it there purposely so that at that point you can use it. And they want you to get that stage because they know at that point, first of all, you won't be as energetic as you were before. You won't have much to offer.
Some might not agree. Some people feel they have a lot to offer at that point.
Yes and no. So and they're trying to emphasize the point that, guys, you need to realize at a certain point T, when you're 60, 70, you're going to need money to survive. You might even live longer than your working life.
Yeah.
So, and that is ideally what true retirement should be.
Longer than your working life. Oh, okay, I'm going to stop you there, Banisa. Let's take a break, but we'll be right back.
We offer professional barber, hairdressing at Lugogo Mall, Garden City, Forest Mall, Oasis Mall, and Acacia Mall. Sparkle Saloon, professional, affordable, and quality services.
Welcome back. We're talking about retirement, planning for retirement, and I wanted to hear from you also on what retirement means from because I mean you work in the retirement bureau.
Yes, actually, the issue of retirement, many times people assume that it's something that can be written in stone, but it can be looked at in a number of ways. For instance, if it is an institutional policy that at 60 you've got to leave us.
Okay.
People look at that as retirement. Then sometimes it is your own individual decision.
Like Panis was saying.
You say, okay, at that I retire. But there are some cases where it's just sickness, ill health, loss of memory, etc. And you cannot be able to engage. That's why what I pick from Janice's comments is active work life. If you are unable to be engaged actively in work, then you are eligible for retirement. Because many people say, okay, I've retired at 40, but they're just switching jobs. They start a consultancy firm, etc.
So that's not retirement.
That's not retirement. When you are unable to actively engage in work,
Then you're retired.
then you have retired,
Okay.
regardless of the reason.
So what happens if I retire for any of these reasons that you've given and I have no money? I didn't plan. What options do I have? Where do I start from? I mean, I'm sure it's happened to people, and someone is probably watching and saying, okay, so me, I didn't have money, but now what do I do?
I think there are two things which could happen. The first one is I've retired and I have no money, and I have to first of all accept that this is the reality. And I think sometimes you can spend a bit of time in the moment of denial, blaming who caused this to you, or who caused you to lose your job, or the way the society has conspired against you. So there is that. But the second thing is, what are you going to take action now? Because I feel like when you have a simple question of supper or milk this evening to answer, the question is that you have to go back to the basics and say, can I be able to earn a what? To get some work done to earn an income. And I think that it is not a bad thing to find someone who is 65 saying, I'm going out there to start earning an income. At least it's a decent way of earning an income, because the alternative would be to beg. But if someone goes out and says, you know what, the circumstances, the way they are right now, I don't earn an income, I need to get something started. I mean, you would imagine that starting a business only happens when you are 25 or 30, but there are people who could start even at 60 and still make a decent life. But that acceptance that this is the reality and I need to face it. Now, most people will actually delegate that obligation. You could delegate it to your children, you could delegate it to the government or to society and say, you know what, you people, you need to come out and look after me because now I'm retired and I have no income. But the point is that if there is, and there are unfortunate things, possibly your health and things like that, that's another discussion altogether. But if there is a bit of energy, you have to ask yourself, from the skill set which I have, is there a thing or two that I can actually do to earn a what? To earn an income. Yeah. And I personally think that you will be received in a good light. You will find that you find many people who are willing to support you if that's the path which you want to take. But you need, first of all, accept that this is how it is, and these are the facts. I mean, you could complain about I should have prepared earlier, but the one thing about time is that you can't get it back. If it has passed, it has passed, so we can't get it back. So you need to ask yourself, what can I do tomorrow to make sure that I earn an income, and how can I change my situation in one or the other?
I was reading an article online. There was a gentleman who used to be a famous actor at some point, and now he's much older, grey hair and all, and he was packing bags at a supermarket, of course in Europe, and he's packing people's groceries, and someone sees him and says, "Oh my!" So there seems to be a certain kind of shame that surrounds this age, and you're still working, and moreover you're doing this kind of work. How do you get past it and say, "Look, I need money. I need to take care of myself," and rather than rely on, if I can still do something, I should. I
can just add on to what he said, relatedly. I like what he said, acceptance. You know, it begins with us. You need to accept the situation as it is. Personally, when I'm facing a situation, I like to tell myself, okay, now that the situation is like this, what are we going to do? Because it doesn't help crying and, looking back. And also it takes an emotional toll on you, the fact that, okay, I've retired, I can't go back to formal employment. What do I do? And financial stress can be really stressful because you need money to survive every day. What do you do? So I think when you begin to accept this is my situation and you say, okay, now you're open to even brainstorm with people, what can I do, what is out there? And people start to give you ideas and you begin. So for that actor even to go to a supermarket means he accepted his situation, he knows his reality, that I need money to survive, I'm going to do this, because he doesn't have much options. And I guess with time, because you need to weigh between how will people see me and what do I need. Because we cannot even stop people from talking, first of all. There are those who will understand, then there are those who will still talk anyway, regardless of what you do. So I think once you accept, your situation and you must change it, indeed, like he said, you find at that stage, yes, you've retired, but you still have the skill set. It's not like you're still weak. You can be a consultant, you can do different things. Then you begin working on your own individual plans. So you just speak to yourself and see what it is that you need to do for yourself.
Okay. Is there such a thing as, or can you realistically plan for when you're going to retire? Like, can I say now that, so when I'm, because of course I can't say when I'm 30, I'm probably past that. But can I say that now I'm going to retire at age 50 and then I sort of lay out a grand plan and I stick to it and, I make something of myself by age 50 and I'm able to do it? Is it a realistic thing to say?
Yes, just like you retire at 60 because probably the institution says so. Every time we need to be able to have the discipline to assess ourselves and say, okay, what do I have? Just like you look at your income and expenditure, you look at your assets and liabilities and you say, what do I need to do if I'm to retire at 50? So people who plan well, especially in those countries where there's a lot of the arrangements in terms of contributions and benefits.
I mean, they have retirement homes and things.
Yes, when you have this kind of arrangements, it's a bit easier. In our context, it may be hard, but still, I'd like to argue that the moment you assess yourself and you know exactly what's coming in, what's coming out, what do I have in place, then you should be able to make a decision at any point in your life. You will know I am not ready or I am ready, because you know that if you're going to retire at 50, you have another, for instance, our estimates show that if somebody retires at 60, you're going to live for another 18 years. So that makes it
I'm going to live another 18 years if I retire at 60.
Yes, so you'll have 70, you'll die at 78. So you ask yourself, the resources I have, how can I manage them to leverage such that I spend the rest of my life living diligently? So that is what you have to think about at any point in your life. What I see when we go back to the issue of when somebody has retired and there is nothing to speak of, you've spent decades of your life working and you have nothing to speak of, again you have to look at what it is that you can work with. If I've had cases of where somebody abandons a house in a plush neighborhood for rent, then they opt for something more modest such that they can get some return. So there are creative ways if you consult and then you appreciate that your life has to change. You have to make some sacrifices such that you can live a decent retirement.
Okay. Yes, Vanessa. Oh, you want to say something?
I wanted just to add on what he was saying, back to the issue of if you didn't have money. And also being in an African society, because many times you find children come together, or just the togetherness of the African culture. I know some people may not agree with it, but yeah, you see, it might be your uncle, your parent who has taken you through school and has been there for you. It's hard to just look. So of course, on their part, yes, they need to see what they can do, but it can be a family issue. Let's come together and help this person. And over the years with the African culture, that is how togetherness, help your friend, support as they get stability from themselves. So if you've had good relationships, of course it depends. If you didn't have a good relationship, it can be hard.
It's time to build them now.
It can be time to build them now. And yeah, and the support system supports you. But lastly, on the point of planning, Josephine, I think it's like anything in life. When you don't plan anything, there is a problem. So if it's retirement, yes, we can plan. If it's education of your child, yes, you can plan. So to answer your question, yes, we can plan and have goals. In other words, when I stop working, you can ask yourself, okay, so what will I be getting regularly in place of employment? What do I want to do? You know, things to think about. They may seem easy questions, but they're not. You may need to just sit back and see, what do I want? And you can actually start working towards that. It is possible. And I think
the reason I was asking that is that sometimes and I've spoken to a number of people from some of the shows we've had, that somebody stays at a particular job because it's comfortable, you know? So they're not thinking of, is this job going to give me enough to carry me into my retirement? So they're here for as long as, you know, or they could have the option, and I'm just thinking of, if I leave this job and get better, where maybe I'm paid more, I'm able to save more to the goal that I have of this amount of money that I want to retire with, which brings me to the question of, is the question of how much should you have before you retire viable? Can I put a price? Can I cost it?
I think it is. I think it is, because then it helps you. Because at the end of the day, it's another way of asking, okay, but what do I want in retirement? First of all, I think we need to know, so what do we want? And what is the destination? How does retirement look like to us? If I get 2 million every month, is it okay to sustain me? Because maybe my expenses, rent, bills, and what is maybe 1 million, so I'm okay with 2. Or, and I mean, you also look at how you're living now, because you need to understand your situation now, and also to appreciate it later. But I agree with you, at times we don't take time to maybe stop and think and then plan. And that's the starting point. Because even if I come to talk to you, Josephine, however many times, you need to also know what you want as Josephine. Then we work towards that picture, take that journey towards that picture. But it starts with you, because I cannot tell you what you want, you see. So, but once that is clear, I'm sure that at retirement, if I get 5 million a month, I'm okay. What does it mean today? However hard it is, it may not be.
Did you just say if I get 5 million a month?
Okay, just as an example, but you get the point. Many of us don't take time to think, and that can be the only difference, just not planning and maybe not thinking about it. And indeed, we go through life, and then things happen. And that is why you find people who have planned are more or less relaxed. They have that rental income that does X. They have this business that does C. They have, so I think it's important, and we need to be deliberate about it. You see, there are things that start with us. So I can only push you so hard to do it, but it starts with us. Like he's saying, know your assets, your liabilities, know things about you, because you're the best person who knows. Then now even when you discuss with others, it makes sense. Like, okay, when I do this investment, actually it will help X, so it will do this. But I think it starts with us.
Okay.
What do we want? What is that picture of retirement to us?
Okay. Well, let's take another short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, Nile Room, and tonight we're talking about preparing for retirement. You wanted to say something, Ronald?
Yeah, I wanted to add a thing, one thing to the debate on the planning, and I think I work with small and medium businesses, and one of the things which we do is to try and prepare a business plan. So work with the entrepreneur to prepare a business plan. But one thing which we have noticed is many times there is a lot of optimism in planning. So you plan and you say, I think by the time I retire when I am 60, I am 30 now, that is 30 years, my income is going to be rising at this amount, and possibly I should be a CEO by the time I'm 45. So usually that optimism goes into your plan and it determines the lifestyle which you will have at the end. So one of the things which I wanted to add was that we need to have best case scenario, worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Assuming you retire in 5 years. Now you are saying that you retire when you are 60, but what if you are mixed in a case which causes you never to be employable again in the next 5 years?
Wow, that's a good one to think about.
Yeah, I mean, what exactly are you going to do? And so that could be a worst case scenario, because that changes the priorities. I think Bernice touched on this. It is which priorities are you dealing with? I mean, you may talk about a dream house, your dream house you want to build, when you have the option of working up to 60. When you have only 5 years, you're just saying, I need 2 rooms, and I want to be able to have a place to sleep, and I want to tick that box. And that process of saying what's the best case scenario and worst case scenario is very important as we plan for our retirement, because I think one thing which you mentioned earlier is the turbulence. It is that even people who felt that their jobs were stable, I mean, there are government institutions where they have let everyone go. And our argument was always that if you are in government, your job is as safe as it was, as it gets. But now they tell you, no, the whole institution, we have let you go home. So how do you deal with that? So we need to actually, as we plan for our retirement, we need to factor that in. What's the worst case scenario? What if tomorrow my husband or my wife passes away? What exactly does that mean to this plan which I am making? So when you put it that way, usually you start getting priorities in place. Just saying, okay, school fees, that one is absolutely important. A home, that is absolutely important. Having a small place where I can get just even 300,000 every month, that is an absolutely important thing. So you start, actually, your priorities become clear. If you deal with those, then you can be able to even deal with the bigger priorities. But if we plan in such a way with the rosy picture, you know, the future is always very bright. When you look at it, you see yourself, this big job you are going to get until the reality happens. So you need to actually have best case scenario and then worst case scenario.
Okay. You mentioned something, and I've sort of forgotten what exactly you said that I wanted to pick. Oh, you mentioned something that I wanted to relate to. What happens, what is the risk of one spouse taking on that burden of our retirement, you know, the two of us? What is that risk? That what if he passes on before this grand plan comes into being? What if he's a stay-at-home dad and she works, and so he's expecting that she has this retirement plan figured out and she doesn't? What's the risk of that one-man show, one-woman show?
Well, the challenge we have in our context is the fact that there's no effective engagement at family level, that is among the spouses. So neither is clear about what the plan is. But the ideal situation would be just to again look at the possibilities you have. You know you are a housewife or man at home, and then you say, very well, if she is working, and you share about what it is she's doing in terms of saving for retirement. Because more often than not, we do not think about saving in the context of saving for retirement. So when you ask people what is saving at any point in their life, they say, well, it's just putting money aside. And so you say, what does it mean? What are you putting aside and what is it for? Because if you have abstinence from consumption out of your disposable income, you should be able to say that I'm opting out of consumption because I want to say A, B, C, D. I want to save for this and that. And so the spouses need to discuss and know that he is saving with NSSF and she's the beneficiary, or with the children, and this is her percentage. If you're having a supplementary scheme, you have to do that. And if you have any other projects, she has to be engaged, because then she can follow up on these issues. But more often, the discussion about retirement is non-existent. And that's what I said earlier, that the future self is nowhere in the discussion. We only think about now. So he mentioned about the future, and my argument is that the future is now. Even when you're working with your spouse, you need to indicate that at some point we are going to retire. And you both have to appreciate that when you're together and you engage, you plan better. And in the event, sometimes it's death, sometimes it's ill health.
Yeah.
Yes, when somebody can't even remember how much he has on his account, or the titles he has for land or certificate of shares, nothing at all. If you have a case where the spouse doesn't know, then the chances high that you're going to lose all these assets. So effective engagement is what I would recommend from day one, such that you know how you're doing and you can monitor each other to know that you're doing better, because when you know better, you do better together.
You plan better together. There's a lady we once spoke to, and she was saying when her husband passed on, she didn't even, so she was finding out maybe he has an accountant, because she was finding in his property a card for this banker, but she didn't know about any of that. So there's actually a real danger to not knowing.
Yeah, I could say something, but
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely true, and I wanted to add a bit on the family dynamics with money. I mean, there are two categories of people. I mean, your spouse is one of those categories. Then it could be your children. I mean, if your spouse doesn't know where your money is or the date which you have taken, because I mean, many families, the biggest struggle when the person passes away is someone coming and saying, no, he took 30 million from me, here is his agreement. So I'm taking the title of the house to compensate myself. So those are questions. So I think the discussion of money needs to happen. And I feel like the starting point of discussing retirement is actually discussing money. It becomes a conversation which you have when you're having supper.
How do you start this conversation? Give me a scenario.
I think most times I agree with it. It's an absolutely difficult conversation to have, and I think what needs to happen is to go through the discomfort. I mean, I'll talk as a man. Most men, they don't want to show vulnerability. You don't come back to your household and announce that, friends, by the way, you may think we are rich, but we are poor. It's not a very comfortable conversation. So as a man, you say, you know what, I'm going to maintain the status quo. I'll be quiet and quarrel about anyone who asks for money. But the point is that at that point, you don't have choices. I mean, if I'm in debt, I'm heavily in debt, I have to go to my wife and say, you know what, the truth is, I didn't tell you when I was taking the loan, but it is there, and I'm about to be arrested. So if you don't find me coming home, that is it. I think that's where the conversation starts. But specifically with the children, I think it has to start early. If you give pocket money to your son or your daughter to go to school, you should actually ask how they used it. It can't be that all the pocket money was for spending. I mean, for example, for the Christians, when you get 10,000, you are supposed to tithe 10%. So that's a good start. So did you tithe on the 10,000 I gave you? Then did you save a bit of it? And where did you save it? Do you have a small saving group at school that you have used? If the conversation starts at that point, then it can actually broaden. And even with our siblings, one of the most difficult conversations to have is actually a conversation about money with our siblings. Your brother is expanding his family at an exponential rate, and you can't tell him that, friend, how are we going to pay the school fees of these children? But I feel like that's what family meetings should be about. That, you know what, okay, what work are you doing? How are we going to make money? The land is idle. Can someone cultivate it? I mean, most people go to their villages and there is land which is there but not being cultivated. But they will call you and say, you know what, you send some money. So if we don't have those conversations, I think the transformation even at the higher level just can't happen.
we need a financial advisor in every family meeting.
You would say.
So it's not all about sibling rivalry at every meeting and
Yes.
fighting over this or that. Vanessa, I'd like you to have the final say because I'd like to close this conversation for tonight.
Just overall?
Yeah, on this, what we've been talking about.
Just right now. I was just going to say something, just to add something small to what you were saying, just to speak to our reality, because the reality is, yes, your perfect couple, yes, shares and opens up, and you know what I have, he knows what you have, where everything is put, and that's the ideal. And there are people like that. But then the realities of some people not trusting, you don't want her to know, like your story. You discover later, God forbid, after the man has passed on, that there were all the things that were there. So just to tie into your question of what is the risk, maybe it's to begin to ask yourself also, what can I do in the event that I've not been planned for, in the event that, because if someone doesn't want to talk about it, you can't force the conversation. But then it's just to look back and see, what can I do? Because you can control what you can do. What can I start doing? However humble, however little. Yes, if I found they've done something for me, then that's a plus. But maybe just to say, always to look within ourselves. There's always something I believe we can do. At whatever level, at whatever it is, there's always something. We just need to be deliberate about it. Start to paint the picture, that retirement picture that you want, and start working towards it. So you can actually have goals and targets and all the things you do, whether savings, whether putting money in an account and things like that, are just vehicles to get us there. But we need to know where we are going. Otherwise, it's like being in a car and you're driving endlessly and there is no destination.
There's no end.
Yeah, so it begins with, what do you want and what does it mean for me now, 30 years before I retire?
Thank you so much for watching. Coming up is NTV Weekend Edition. Keep it NTV.
Renew your monthly basic bouquet subscription of 18,000 shillings before it expires. Then enjoy 3 free days only on StarTimes. Enjoy